The retirement party was perfect. 43 years at the same company, gold watch, cake, speeches about loyalty and the American dream. Then Michael opened his 401k statement. After a lifetime of contributions, he had enough to last maybe 8 years if he was lucky, if inflation stayed low, if healthcare costs didn't spike. If nothing went wrong, he's not alone. Right now, 78 million baby boomers are staring at the same nightmare. They did everything right. They saved. They invested. They believed in the system, and the system is failing them. The average retirement savings for Americans aged 60 to 69 is just over $200,000. Sounds reasonable until you do the math. That's less than $7,000 a year for 30 years. Try living on that in San Francisco, or Miami, or anywhere in this country. But here's what the financial advisors won't tell you, what the retirement industry doesn't want you to know. There's an entire generation that's figured out the secret. They're not staying. They're leaving. And they're living better than they ever could have here. This isn't about running away. It's about survival. Let's go back. 1980. Ronald Reagan is president. The middle class is thriving. A single income can buy a house, raise kids, and still save for retirement. Pensions are standard. Companies take care of their people. Work 40 years, get a paycheck for life. Simple. Secure. The deal was clear. You give us your labor, we give you dignity in old age. Then something shifted. Corporate America discovered a beautiful trick. Why guarantee lifetime pensions when you can shift the risk to workers? Enter the 401k. Introduced in 1978 as a tax loophole for executives, it became the weapon that destroyed retirement security. By the early 90s, companies were abandoning pensions in droves. They sold it as freedom. You control your destiny. You pick your investments. What they didn't mention was that you also absorb all the risk. Market crash is bad timing. Fees that compound against you for decades. The average American has no idea how to manage a retirement portfolio. Why would they? They're teachers, mechanics, nurses, not financial analysts, but suddenly that's their job, and most fail. By 2008, the illusion cracked. The financial crisis wiped out trillions in retirement savings overnight. People in their 60s watched their nest eggs cut in half. No time to recover, no do-overs, just crushing realization. The system wasn't designed to protect them. It was designed to profit from them. Meanwhile, the cost of living in America was exploding. Healthcare became the second mortgage you never signed up for. A single hospital visit could drain years of savings. Prescription drugs cost 10 times what they do in other countries. Housing prices detached from reality. Cities that were affordable in the 80s became playgrounds for the wealthy. Even small towns weren't safe. Property taxes climbed. Insurance premiums doubled. Everything got more expensive except wages. Retirees were trapped. Too young for full Social Security. Too old to rebuild wealth. Too broke to live with dignity. That's when some started looking at maps differently. It started quietly. A few adventurous souls retiring to Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica. They weren't wealthy. They were desperate. But something strange happened. They thrived. A one-bedroom apartment in Playa del Carmen cost $400 a month. Full-time healthcare in Medellin ran $80 monthly. Restaurant meals for $3. Domestic help affordable. Suddenly that $200,000 in savings wasn't a death sentence. It was a ticket to comfort. Word spread slowly at first. Expat forums, Facebook groups, blogs with names like Escape from America and Geographic Arbitrage. These weren't trust fund kids chasing Instagram photos. These were retired postal workers from Ohio, former teachers from Oregon, regular people who did the math and realized staying in America meant choosing between medication and food. The numbers were impossible to ignore. Social Security pays the average retiree about $1,800 monthly. Try renting an apartment in any American city for that. Now imagine that same check in Cuenca, Ecuador, or Chiang Mai, Thailand, or Porto, Portugal. Suddenly you're not surviving, you're living. Well, by 2010, the trickle became a stream. By 2020, it was a flood. The State Department estimates 9 million Americans now live abroad. Nobody knows exactly how many are retirees, but the anecdotal evidence is everywhere. Walk through any colonial city in Mexico or Central America and you'll find them. Coffee shops full of Americans in their 60s and 70s, comparing notes on visa processes and cost of living. This wasn't supposed to happen. The American dream was supposed to work at home. You weren't supposed to need an exit strategy from your own country. But the math doesn't lie, and more people are waking up to a terrifying truth. Retiring in America isn't just difficult anymore. For most people, it's impossible. Unless you're wealthy, the only rational choice is to leave, and that's exactly what the system is counting on. Because if enough people leave, maybe nobody will demand they fix what's broken. But to understand why this became the only option, we need to look at what happened behind closed doors. The retirement crisis didn't happen by accident. It was engineered. And the people who engineered it made billions while destroying the safety net of an entire generation. Let's talk about the math they don't want you to see. Fidelity Investments, one of the largest retirement fund managers in America, released a study in 2022. They said a 65-year-old couple would need $315,000 just for healthcare costs in retirement, not housing, not food, not living, just healthcare. Add in basic living expenses and you're looking at a minimum of $50,000 annually to maintain a lower middle-class lifestyle. Multiply that by 25 years of retirement. You need $1.25 million minimum. The median retirement savings for Americans approaching retirement is $78,000. Do that math. 78,000 versus 1.25 million. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. That's an entire generation staring into financial oblivion. But here's where it gets darker. The financial industry knew this was coming. They've known for decades. Internal documents from major investment firms in the 90s warned that 401k plans would create a retirement disaster. They knew most Americans would undersave, panic during crashes, pay excessive fees, and retire broke. They recommended these plans anyway. Why? Because managing 401k assets generates massive fees. $22 billion in fees annually. The retirement crisis isn't a bug, it's a profit center. Then there's healthcare. The industry that's supposed to keep you alive is the same one bankrupting retirees. Medicare covers some costs, but not dental, not vision, not hearing aids, not long-term care. Those gaps are filled by supplemental insurance that costs hundreds monthly. And prescription drugs. The markup is criminal. Insulin that costs $6 to produce sells for $300. Cancer drugs can run $10,000 monthly. Americans pay more for healthcare than any nation on earth and get worse outcomes than most developed countries. The system is designed to extract every dollar you save before you die. Now compare that to what Americans are finding abroad. In Mexico, a full health insurance policy for a retiree costs between $100 and $200 monthly. No deductibles. Doctors make house calls. Prescription drugs cost a fraction of U.S. prices. That same insulin, $12. No insurance needed. Just walk into a pharmacy and buy it. Hip replacement surgery in the U.S. runs $40,000. In Colombia, $7,000. And the quality is often better because doctors spend time with patients instead of rushing through 10 appointments an hour to satisfy insurance quotas. This isn't theoretical. Real people are making these calculations. Linda and Robert from Michigan had $260,000 in retirement savings. In Grand Rapids, their property taxes alone were $6,000 annually. Health insurance through Hobrai was $2,000 monthly until they qualified for Medicare. They did the math. They'd be broke in 9 years. So they moved to Mérida, Mexico. Now they rent a 3-bedroom house with a pool for $700 monthly. Health insurance for both of them runs $120. They eat out 5 times a week. They travel. They're thriving on a budget that would have left them destitute in America. Stories like theirs are everywhere. Portugal has become a magnet for American retirees because the cost of living is 60% lower than the U.S. Thailand offers world-class healthcare at developing world prices. Panama gives tax breaks to foreign retirees and has more American amenities than most U.S. cities. Ecuador's retirement visa requires you to prove just $800 monthly income. Suddenly, Social Security isn't poverty, it's comfort. But the exodus reveals something sinister about America itself. If millions of people can only afford to retire by leaving, what does that say about the richest country in history? It says the wealth isn't reaching the people who built it. It says the system is optimized for extraction, not sustainability. It says we've normalized a level of cruelty that would have been unthinkable to previous generations. Consider this. In 1970, the average CEO made 20 times what their workers earned. Today, it's 350 times. Corporate profits are at record highs, shareholder returns are exploding, executive compensation is astronomical. Meanwhile, real wages for workers have been stagnant for 40 years. The money didn't disappear. It moved upward. Away from the people who created it, retirement security was sacrificed to boost quarterly earnings. Pensions were eliminated to increase profit margins. Healthcare costs were allowed to spiral because insurance companies and pharmaceutical firms have more lobbyists than any other industry. Housing became an investment vehicle for the wealthy instead of a basic need for everyone else. Every policy decision for the past 40 years has favored capital over labor, and now an entire generation is paying the price. The politicians know. They've seen the data. But fixing it would require challenging the same corporations that fund their campaigns. So they offer platitudes. They tell you to save more, work longer, cut expenses. They blame individuals for systemic failure. They act like retiring to a different country is some kind of adventure instead of an indictment of everything that's broken. And the media plays along. Travel magazines run cheerful articles about retiring abroad. They focus on beaches and low costs and adventure. They don't mention that these people aren't choosing exotic lifestyles. They're economic refugees from their own country, forced out by a system that promised security and delivered bankruptcy. The cruelest part is how it divides people. If you have wealth, America is paradise. World-class healthcare, beautiful communities, political power, legal protection. If you're rich, retirement in America is probably the best in the world. But if you're middle class or below, you're invisible. Your 30 years of contributions don't matter. Your loyalty means nothing. You're disposable. And when you can't afford to stay anymore, the system shrugs. Nobody in power is sounding the alarm because the people in power will be fine. They have government pensions, lifetime health care, stock portfolios managed by professionals, real estate that appreciates. They'll never face the choice between medication and rent. They'll never understand the desperation that drives someone to uproot their entire life at 70 years old and move to a country where they don't speak the language just to survive. But maybe that's exactly what they want. An aging population that can't afford to stay becomes someone else's problem. Social security stress decreases. Medicare costs drop. Fewer people demanding accountability. It's the perfect solution for a government that stopped caring about its people decades ago. The math is simple, brutal, and deniable. For most Americans, retiring with dignity in their own country is financially impossible, and every year that passes, more people realize it. The exodus is accelerating, and it's leaving behind a country that chews up workers for 40 years, then discards them when they're no longer profitable. The consequences are already unfolding, and they're going to reshape America in ways nobody's prepared for. Small towns across the Midwest and South are becoming ghost towns. Not because young people left, that's been happening for decades. But now the retirees are leaving too. The people who stayed, who owned businesses, who volunteered, who held communities together, they're gone. Moved to Mazatlan or Lisbon or Bali, the tax base evaporates, schools close, hospitals shut down. What's left behind are empty houses and younger generations inheriting a system even more broken than the one that failed their parents. The economic impact is staggering. When retirees leave America, they take their spending power with them. Social security checks get deposited in foreign banks. Medicare costs drop, but so does consumption. Local businesses that relied on retiree spending collapse: hair salons, restaurants, medical practices, golf courses. The entire infrastructure built around aging Americans is crumbling because the customers can't afford to be customers anymore, and it's accelerating. The youngest boomers turn 65 in 2029. That's millions more people facing the same math, the same impossible choice. Industry experts predict the expat retiree population could triple in the next decade. Entire American communities abroad are forming. Lakeside in Mexico has 30,000 American expats. More arrive monthly. They're not tourists, they're permanent residents who chose survival over patriotism. But here's what nobody's talking about. The countries accepting these retirees are getting a raw deal too. Americans arrive with first world expectations and third world budgets. They drive up housing costs in local markets. A Mexican family that could afford rent in San Miguel de Allende 10 years ago is now priced out by American retirees paying cash. The economic colonization is real. Local resentment is building. And eventually, these host countries will tighten their visa requirements or raise costs. The escape hatch won't stay open forever. Then what? When retiring abroad becomes expensive too, where do people go? The answer is nowhere. They don't retire. They work until they physically can't. Then they depend on family who can't afford to help them. Then they suffer, quietly, out of view. The way America prefers. Some argue this is just market forces, that people should have saved more, invested better, made smarter choices. But that argument ignores reality. Wages have been suppressed for decades. Education costs exploded. Healthcare costs exploded. Housing costs exploded. Every major expense increased faster than income. The game was rigged from the start. You can't blame individuals for systemic failure designed to transfer wealth upward while leaving everyone else behind. Others say the solution is simple. Just fix Social Security. Strengthen Medicare. Regulate healthcare costs. Bring back pensions. And they're right. Those solutions would work, but they require political will that doesn't exist. Too many powerful interests profit from the current system. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical firms, financial services, they've captured the regulatory process. They write the laws. They fund the campaigns. Real reform would require confronting the most powerful industries in America. And nobody with power wants that fight, so the exodus continues, and the country fractures. Wealthy Americans retire in comfort. Middle-class Americans flee to cheaper countries. Poor Americans work until they die. Three Americas, separate and unequal. The promise of shared prosperity completely abandoned. But there's something deeper happening here, something philosophical. For generations, Americans were told that if you work hard, you'll be okay, that loyalty matters, that the system rewards contribution, that America takes care of its own. Every single one of those promises has been broken, and millions of people are waking up to the betrayal. The social contract is void. And once people realize that, everything changes. Trust in institutions is collapsing. Faith in the American dream is dying. Younger generations are watching their parents and grandparents get discarded and thinking, why should I play this game? Why should I save in a 401k that could crash? Why should I stay loyal to companies that will eliminate my job to boost stock prices? Why should I believe in a country that forces its elderly into economic exile? The answer is they shouldn't, and they won't. The retirement crisis is creating generational trauma that will echo for decades. It's teaching an entire generation that the system is adversarial, that you're on your own, that community and loyalty are luxuries that only the wealthy can afford. Those lessons will shape policy, culture, and social cohesion for the rest of this century. Some people are fighting back. Grassroots movements demanding Medicare for all, politicians proposing wealth taxes to fund social programs, unions pushing for pension restoration. There's resistance. But it's slow, and time is running out for millions of people who needed help yesterday. The truth is, retiring abroad isn't a solution. It's a symptom, a desperate response to systemic collapse, and treating it as some kind of lifestyle choice instead of an indictment of American failure is exactly how those in power avoid accountability. They'd rather you focus on which beach town has the best tacos than ask why the richest country in history can't take care of its elderly. So here's where we are. If you're approaching retirement without significant wealth, your options are limited. You can work until you physically can't. You can depend on family who are probably struggling themselves. Or you can leave. Those are the choices. That's what the American dream has become. Not opportunity, not security, but the freedom to choose which form of hardship you prefer. And maybe that's the final lesson. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed to concentrate wealth, to eliminate security, to force people into impossible choices and then blame them for the outcomes. The retirement crisis is just one front in a larger war against the working class. A war that's been waging for 40 years. A war that most people didn't even realize they were losing until it was too late. Michael, from the beginning of this story, he moved to Portugal last year. His social security check covers a nice apartment in Porto, healthcare, food, entertainment. He's fine now, but he shouldn't have had to leave. None of them should. In a just society, 43 years of work would earn you dignity at home. But we don't live in that society. We live in this one. So if you're young, start planning now, because this system will fail you too. If you're approaching retirement, run the numbers honestly. Don't believe the platitudes. And if you're already retired and struggling, know that you're not alone. Millions of people are facing the same nightmare. And it's not your fault. The American retirement dream is dead. It was killed deliberately, methodically, for profit. And until enough people get angry enough to demand change, the only option for most Americans is exactly what the title promised. Retiring abroad isn't just an option anymore. For most people, it's the only one.